background to the study of English literature, and today's topic is the heroic couplet, which is belong to the category of stanza form. So, the heroic couplet we all know is a very popular poetic genre. So, first, let us discuss its characteristic. The heroic couplet consists of two iambic pentameter lines of 10 syllables rhyming together. The following, so I am now giving an example of: we think our father fool, so wise we grow. Our wiser son, no doubt, will think us so. These are the lines by Pope. It is called heroic because 10 syllable iambic verse, whether um, it rhymes or not, is the usual form for epic verse in English, celebrating heroic exploit. Its standard form, as exemplified by Pope, involve a pause at the end of every line and the completion of the sense at the end of the couplet. The running on of the sense without pause from line to line or couplet to couplet, which is technically called enjambment, is avoided. Nor is the couplet split to link up the sense of one at least of the two lines with that of the preceding or succeeding couplet. It is always closed or complete in itself. The rhyme is single, falling in each line or the last syllable, which metrically is accented or long. Double rhyme, as in high, lightly and brightly, where both the syllable of one rhyme with both of the other is rarely found. The Pope uses heaven and seven. All these characteristics may be noted in the couplet which I have read just now. So the first point is of heroic couplet is that there is a pause at the end of the first line indicated by a comma signifying partial completion of the sense. Now the second point is there is a pause at the end of the couplet indicated by a full stop signifying full completion of the sense. Now third point is the couplet is closed, not requiring the aid of either a predecessor or a successor to complete its meaning. Then the fourth point is that the rhyme is single, the rhyming part of each line grow and so being single syllable. Then the fifth part is that the number of syllables in is 10, the odd ones accented or short, the even accented or long. So now let us discuss the variation in heroic couplet. The use of the heroic couplet has varied from time to time and from author to author. Means different author has used a varied style. It was practiced more correctly by Pope, and even he does not always conform strictly to its rule, for as he himself aptly remark, whoever I quote, whoever thinks a faultless piece to see thinks whatever was nor is nor shall be. So a special feature of this heroic verse is a pause or caesura towards the middle of every line, and the symmetrical structure of the couplet where each line and each half of the line is balanced against the other, as in the following: when in describing a garden he may be said to describe his own poetic method. So I am quoting the lines by him: grove nods at grove, each alley has a brother, and half the platform just reflects the other. uh, so the heroic couplet in practice, however, is not so straight as Pope would have us believe. It has to adapt itself to the requirement of the thought. It frequently expands into a triplet. Triplet means three lines with the same rhyme, on which his own essay on criticism afford numerous instances, and this is but a step towards the enjambed or run-on couplet, of which again there are several examples in his writing. Dryden verse, earlier in date, exhibit the same features. Dryden verse earlier in date exhibit the same features. His lines are not always end stop, nor his couplet self contained. Both run on or stop at the end according as the same dialect. Occasionally, he introduces an Alexandrine, which is basically a line of six iambic feet instead of five. Which is a practice condemned by Pope in lines containing a fine example of meter. In his essay on criticism, he says, "A needless Alexandrine end the song, that like wounded snake drag its slow length along. All these are studied discord, no doubt, calculated to relieve the monotony of this somewhat jog-trot meter." So when we discuss about the history, then the heroic couplet was first used in England by Chaucer. So Chaucer can be called as the father of heroic couplet. He probably derived it from older French words. Means Chaucer is the father of heroic couplet only for in British literature. Earlier, it was the French who have used it first. Many of his Canterbury Tales are related in heroic couplet. He was followed by Spenser, who employed it for his Mother Hubbard's tale, a satirical narrative in verse. The Elizabethan used it with equal skill in their poetry and drama, some like Shakespeare and Ben Jonson employing it occasionally for the sake of variety or to round off a passage, and others like Marlowe in his Hero and Leander adopting it for storytelling in verse. Their chief instrument, however, was the 10-syllable unrhymed or blank verse. Milton and the metaphysical poet had little predilection for the couplet. With Waller and Denham, it may be said to have entered on a more glorious phase. Means these two writers have made this heroic couplet more famous, more popular. The excellence and dignity of rhyme, says Dryden, were never fully known till Mr. Waller taught it. He first made writing easily an art, first showed us to conclude the sense most commonly in a distich. Pope pay a tribute to both, I quote his lines, and praise the easy vigor of a line, where Denham's strength and Waller's sweetness join. It was left to Dryden and poet, however, to give the heroic couplet a quality. So these two writers, Dryden and poet, have used heroic couplet in most of their work, and they have made it more popular and more accessible to all the writers around the world. They have given the heroic couplet a quality it has never possessed before. It was they who imparted to it the easy vigor, strength, and sweetness which Pope attributed to his predecessor. They used it for various competition like drama, epic, satire, didactic verse, each of which is served with remarkable adaptability. Though it proved too formal and intellectual a meter for the lyric, it does not suggest a song. With the coming of the Romantic poets about the beginning of the 19th century, the couplet structure was changed. So, as it was used by Renaissance poet like Dryden and Pope, Romantic poet have used it in a different way. So it became, they made it and jam, line running on into line, couplet into couplet. For example, with the pause constantly changing position from line to line, according as the sense required. It became in word a verse paragraph, growing far beyond the two-line limit. Metrical variation were also introduced more frequently. I am reading some of the lines from Keats' Lamia, which is like a prose paragraph, though it is written in the heroic couplet form. I quote, "Why this fair creature choose so fairly by the wayside to linger, we shall see. But first, 'tis fit to tell how she could muse and dream when in the serpent prison house, or all she list strange or magnificent." Unquote. The sense is continuous, and the old restraint and limitation have been completely ignored. By this time, the heroic couplet has gone out of fashion. So, during the Romantic age, it was not so popular. It was replaced by other stanza form that afforded greater freedom to the writer. The Romantics, who aimed at natural diction and were lyrical poets, had little use for it, but it was not wholly given up. Byron, Shelley, Keats, and Leigh Hunt all employed it, though with a new freedom. Then Victorian poet like Browning, William Morris, and Swinburne, a generation later, used it in exact the same manner, again with a preference uh, for other modes of expression. For narrative verse, it survived to its day, but after all the changes it has undergone, it bear little resemblance to the heroic couplet